September 2014. Off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, a researcher in rubber gloves lifts a yellow tag from gray Atlantic chop. Salt-crusted, barnacled, the size of a brick, it drips. It reeks of brine and deep ocean. 2 hours and 17 minutes ago, it vanished beneath this surface. Now it's back. Nobody speaks yet. 2 crew members in orange survival vests lean over the rail. One holds a radio, the other just watches the tag drip. The silence on deck is not calm. It is the silence of people who already suspect something is wrong with the numbers. Inside the instrument cabin, a researcher pulls up the dive profile graph on a narrow laptop. A single line plunges nearly off the chart. Her finger traces it downward, pauses, doesn't move. She is looking at a depth axis. The line bottoms out past 2,500 meters. A red annotation dot marks the lowest point. Beside it, a timestamp, 2 hours 17 minutes. She traces it again. Same answer. Below this coastline, below the lighthouse, below the shipping lanes, below the shelf edge, the ocean floor sits close to 3,000 meters down. The pressure there exceeds 300 atmospheres. A human body would be destroyed in seconds. Something went down there, something came back. The animal was a Cuvier's beaked whale, slate gray, heavily scarred, unremarkable looking at the surface, maybe 12 meters long, built like a blunt torpedo. Nothing about it suggests the impossible. Here is what the physics says should happen. Below 100 meters, the lungs of any air-breathing mammal collapse completely. Not partially, completely, flat. A sealed envelope of tissue holding nothing. Andreas Vollmann at the Oceanographic Foundation published that model in 2014. His words, at depths exceeding 70 to 100 meters, the lungs of deep-diving marine mammals are expected to collapse completely, forcing all air into the rigid upper airways. The whale crossed that threshold, then kept diving. For nearly 2 more kilometers. The cable clicks into the tag's data port. The file loads. The researcher's face reflects faintly in the screen. The number is not an estimate. It is a time-stamped data file, logged to the second. That number, the exact depth, the exact duration, recorded on a specific date off the US East Coast, forced biologists to rewrite what a mammalian body is physically allowed to do. By the end of this video, you will see it. And the question it leaves open is stranger than the record itself. The textbook has been saying the same thing since the 1960s. Open any marine physiology manual from that era and the diagram is identical. A seal, descending, heart rate dropping, blood retreating from the limbs, the diving reflex, clean arrows, confident labels, case closed. The mechanics are elegant. As a mammal submerges, the body executes a precise sequence. Peripheral vessels constrict. Blood floods inward, protecting the heart and brain. Heart rate falls. Oxygen is rationed. The lungs compress under pressure, their gas forced upward into rigid airways where it cannot cross into the bloodstream and cause nitrogen toxicity. The model works. For seals, for dolphins, for trained human divers, it works. Physiologists taught this for 40 years. Bradycardia, vasoconstriction, lung compression. The lecture slides barely changed. The confidence was total. Then the dive tag data arrived. A printout, a column of numbers, heart rate descending during a recorded Cuvier's beaked whale dive. 60, 40, 20, 11, 7. Then, fear. Paul Ponganis at Scripps documented comparable readings, 3 to 4 beats per minute, in diving elephant seals in 2015. A researcher circles the number, sets down the pen. That researcher pulls a second document beside the first. The comparison is immediate. The textbook cites 10 beats per minute as the survivable lower threshold for sustained tissue oxygenation. The tag says 4. The animal returned to the surface alive. 2 documents, side by side. One describes what should kill an animal. The other describes what the animal actually did. On the necropsy table, the lungs confirm Vollmann's 2014 modeling. Collapsed completely, dark, airless, well before 100 meters depth. Expected. But the blood chemistry beside it is not expected. That vial of whale muscle tissue is almost black, human muscle beside it, pale pink. The difference is myoglobin concentration, the protein that stores oxygen directly in tissue. The whale carries it in quantities that have no human equivalent. An oxygen depletion graph shows 2 lines. The model predicts usable oxygen exhausted at 60 minutes. The recorded dive ran 137 minutes. The lines diverge sharply, then completely. A researcher taps the screen where the lines separate. The reflex buys maybe 40 minutes past normal, not 137. Something else is carrying the rest of that dive. So if the reflex isn't enough, what is? That color is the first clue. Nearly black-red, denser than any muscle you have seen. A sample jar under lab lighting, and the tissue inside looks almost wrong. Too dark, too saturated, like something from a different biology entirely. It is. Whale muscle carries myoglobin at concentrations 10 times higher than human muscle, 10 times. The oxygen is not stored in the lungs during a dive. It is stored here, packed directly into the tissue, molecule by molecule. A researcher at a dissection table presses one rib gently. It bends. The joints are cartilaginous, deliberately and structurally so. This is what lets the chest wall collapse without tearing. Not a flaw, a feature. Engineered over millions of years. At 400 meters, the ribcage begins to fold inward. By the time the whale reaches depth, the lungs are flat. Gas exchange has stopped completely. The animal is now running on stored reserves alone. No air, no refill, no margin. And then the spleen fires. It contracts, injecting a bolus of oxygen-rich red blood cells directly into circulation, up to a 24% increase in circulating RBC volume. Folman et al. 2012, Journal of Experimental Biology, confirmed in live dives correlated with tag data. The researcher sits back, arms crossed. So you have stored muscle oxygen, a flexible chest, and a blood reservoir. Together, that gets you to maybe 90 minutes. Maybe. It still doesn't get you to 137. Here is where the mechanism breaks down. Below 1,500 meters, nitrogen partial pressure in residual blood gases should trigger narcosis. On ascent, supersaturation should cause decompression injury. The physics says so. Every gas exchange model we have says so. But the necropsy printout from a stranded beaked whale that dove to 2,200 meters shows nitrogen levels within normal range. The researcher's pen taps the page. These numbers should not look like this. 2 scientists at a lab bench. One points at the screen, the other shakes his head slowly. Not triumph, something closer to unease. The adaptations are real, documented, measured, confirmed. They only explain part of the dive. So what is happening to the nitrogen? 2,992 meters, 2 hours and 17 minutes. And then, 4 minutes later, it went back down. That is not a typo. That is the logged data from a single Cuvier's beaked whale, tagged off Cape Hatteras, September 2014. The number sat on that graph for months before the full weight of it landed. The paper is Shaw et al., published in PLOS 1, 2014. The title does not hedge, deepest dive recorded for any cetacean. The data table is timestamped. The depth is not interpolated or estimated. A researcher's highlighted line in the abstract reads exactly as it sounds, a record so clean it almost looks like instrument error. It is not. Read the numbers aloud and they become strange. 2,992 meters, 2 hours, 17 minutes. The animal surfaced, exhaled, and dove again in 4 minutes. The researcher reading those lines pauses after that last one. That pause is not performance. Cape Hatteras sits at the edge of the continental shelf. The sea floor drops fast there, from shallow coastal water to 3 kilometers of open Atlantic in a matter of miles. The dot on the map is unremarkable. What happened below it was not. Herbert Nitsch holds the human freedive record, 214 meters, 2007. That is the deepest any unassisted human body has gone and returned. The Cuvier's trace on that same scale drops 14 times deeper. The comparison is almost too large to read as real. The whale that surfaced looked ordinary, no visible distress, dorsal fin cutting the chop, then gone again. Nothing in its body language suggested it had just done something biologically impossible. The nitrogen question mark is still on the whiteboard. At 2,992 meters, gas partial pressures should be producing bubble formation on ascent. Andreas Fullman's models say the lungs collapsed before 100 meters. Below 1,500 meters, by every existing model, the animal should be chemically incapacitated. It was not. The sonar contact at 2,200 meters is annotated. Biologics trace warm-blooded, unidentified species. A researcher leans toward the screen. If one mammal operates at 2,992 meters using mechanisms we have only partially mapped, the question of what else uses that physiological space is no longer speculative. It is documentable. The records keep moving. A researcher watches a new depth profile scroll across a laptop, past 2,000 meters, still descending. Tagged animals, unpublished data. November 2020, a Cuvier's reached 3,680 meters, 222 minutes. Each file that loads rewrites the boundary of what a mammalian body is physically allowed to do. The research vessel sits small against late Atlantic light, dark water flat in every direction. Below it, 3 kilometers of pressure and cold, and something that breathes air navigating it without explanation. That is not a metaphor. That is the receipt. If you found this fascinating, subscribe. We investigate strange real creatures like this every single day.